On Friday, May 28, 1926, 16 young women were trapped on the second story of a small manufacturing building in Rockford, Illinois, when sparks from a bandsaw caused a pile of celluloid to burst into flames at the foot of the only stairway to the ground floor. Ultimately, 5 women died and 8 others were hospitalized in the fire that started a half hour after their shift started. Welcome to an audio version of an original article by Kathi Kresol, operator of Haunted Rockford Paranormal Events, Rockford, Illinois. This audio presentation is entitled Sutton Top Shop Fire and contains the 2015 story of the same name. The story originally appeared in Murder Mayhem in Rockford, Illinois by Kathi Kresol. This audio article is produced by Thomas Saunders for Haunted Rockford. Mildred Kramer was the 20-year-old daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Fred Kramer, who, in May 1926, lived at 410 South 4th Street, Rockford, Illinois. She was born in Cherry Valley, Illinois, and went to school there. Mildred moved with her parents to Rockford early in the spring of 1926. Mildred was previously employed for 4 years at the H.W. Buckby Florist store on South Main Street, but had just recently quit when some dirt that blew into her eye caused an infection. It was a frightening experience because the infection caused the loss of sight in her eye, and the doctors didn't know if it would be permanent or not. Eventually, the infection cleared and her eyesight returned to normal. However, her parents were concerned for her safety, and it was decided she would find employment elsewhere. Mildred was very excited to acquire a position at the Sutton Top Shop at 420 Elm Street. The building was once an old livery stable that had been converted into a light manufacturing business. This was a small shop that manufactured and repaired winter covers for all makes of automobiles, performed automobile body repairs, and made celluloid sun visors for adults and children. Brothers William and John C. Sutton owned the business. A heavy demand for their product made the owners decide to expand to 48 employees who would work 2 shifts. They were even planning to move to a new building. The brothers were hoping to be up to full speed by the following week. Mildred was hired to work the second shift. She had been there for 2 days and liked the work so far. Mildred was especially thrilled because they were bringing in 2 new women in to train, and she was excited about meeting them. Friday, May 28th, started out with its usual routine. By 4:30 p.m., Mildred had been at work for about half an hour. She had already been introduced to the new girls. There were about 16 other girls on the second floor working on different projects. The second floor was where the cloth part of the auto roofs was sewn to the celluloid parts. There were also a few men working on the first floor. 2 of the men were cutting the celluloid with a bandsaw. They didn't notice the electric charge that built up or see the sparks that floated down to the floor, but then some of the sparks landed in a pile of celluloid on the floor and ignited it. The workroom was directly under the stairway to the second floor. Intense black smoke billowed up the stairway and was followed by an explosion as the celluloid was engulfed in flames. The men on the first floor desperately tried to extinguish the fire, but within a minute the flames had spread all over the room. The men had to flee to save their own lives and abandon the women to their fate. The room caught fire like a pile of dry sticks. The only exit from the second floor for the women was now blocked by thick smoke, and the flames were spreading very fast as the celluloid quickly ignited more of the cloth material. The room instantly filled with flames. One survivor said they had about 2 minutes to decide whether it would be safer to jump out of the window or stay inside. The scene was mass confusion as the black smoke blinded the girls, and the screams were intense as the fire grew. The women fought their way through the room, falling over one another and the machines in a blind dash to the windows. One woman, Leonie Lowling, recalled the horrible scene. "We hardly had time to leave our workbenches. The flames were shooting up all around us." Leone was one of the first women to leap from the second-story windows to the street below. Another survivor, Elsie Baker, stated, "We had no time to think of what to do." Elsie was trapped in the back part of the room and made it to safety by dashing out of a window on the east side of the building and running across the roof to a store located next door. One woman, later labeled the hero of the day, was Lillian Finkbeiner, the sister of Mrs. William Sutton. She led 4 of the girls to safety through a window onto the roof. She broke a window out in the Patton Hardware building to gain access. Lillian was glad she was able to save the 4, but felt that she should have gotten more of the girls out. The first unit of firefighters arrived from Central Station, which was located just around the corner on Church Street. Some of the men attempted to quickly get water on the building, which was billowing great clouds of black smoke. Other men attempted to assist the workers who were fleeing the building. Fire Chief John D. Blake would later be commended with the other firemen for doing a wonderful job protecting the adjoining buildings from burning. 6 firemen were injured themselves as they attempted to reach the women trapped in the fire. People lined the street, and pictures from the day show some with arms reaching out as if to catch the women. 2 men who worked at an adjoining garage, Bud Shields and Sam Weinberg, tried to break the girls' falls. One girl whose clothes were smoldering jumped into a car and set the upholstery on fire. The men put out the flames by pulling her out of the car and rolling the girl on the cement pavement. The owners, John C. and William, kept rushing back into the building to try to save more women until the firemen finally forced them to stop. 5 women died immediately, and Mildred was one of them. These 5 were in the center of the 2nd floor and never stood a chance. The celluloid went up like gasoline had been poured over it, and they were overcome by the flames. 2 of the dead women had only been in the building for half an hour. 8 other women were sent to the hospital, some with horrible burns. One girl, 17-year-old Lillian Steffen, landed on a truck when she leapt from the building, breaking her back and one arm. Originally, it was thought she would not survive, but Lillian made a full recovery and was released from the hospital on June 30th. There was a huge crowd gathered outside, and the newspaper reported that when the firemen could finally enter the building to remove the bodies, the crowd was amazingly silent. Family members desperately tried to push their way to the front of the crowd to see if their daughters or wives were among the dead, but they were restrained by policemen. Fred C. Olson, the coroner, went into the burned-out building to help remove the bodies of the victims. He personally wrapped each girl in a tarp and had the firemen carry them to the morgue wagon using the alley. The wagon left 15 minutes later and wove its way through the silent mass of humanity. The dead. Mary Lilly, 36 years old, was born in Monrovia, California on June 10, 1889, a daughter of Mr. and Mrs. William Ashton. Mary moved to Rockford in 1905 and married Orrin Lilly in 1906. Orrin worked at the Mechanics Machine Company. They had 8 children: Sherwood 16, Lois 14, Clifford 12, Avis 10, Wilma 9, Alvin 7, Dawn 5, and Hazel, who was just 3 at the time of her mother's death. Mary Lilly was buried at Greenwood Cemetery. Helen Mamalis was a native of Greece who came to Rockford in 1914. Her husband passed away 8 years prior to the fire, and the family had struggled since his death. Helen had been ill for several years and had recently returned from a stay in the Elgin State Hospital. Since her children were so young, Helen qualified for the Mother's Pension Fund, but the $25 sum did not go very far. Her eldest son, Theodore, worked part-time at the Louis Cafe on West State Street. The $15 a week Theodore brought in helped, but Helen was forced to seek other employment. Her other children, George and Mary, were students at Roosevelt Junior High, and the youngest, Aphrodite, attended classes at Blake School. The job at Sutton's seemed like the answer to a prayer. Tragically, the children were left orphans by their mother's death in the fire. Their father's brother, Peter, was not able to keep them together. Arrangements were made for a service for Helen at the Greek Orthodox Church and for burial at Greenwood Cemetery. Mary Wallach came to Rockford in the middle of May 1926 to look for employment and to visit her aunt, Mrs. John Kubelis, who lived at 913 Rockton Avenue. She was from Kansas City, Kansas, where she had lived with her mother. Mary discussed applying for the job at Sutton, but changed her mind when she saw it was originally a 3rd shift position. When Mary saw another advertisement for the 2nd shift, she applied for a position. She was hired the day before the fire and showed up for her first shift just a few minutes before the fire broke out. Mary was only 21 years old. Minnie Stromdahl was 27 years old and was the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. G.T. Huffman. She was married to Emil Stromdahl, and they moved to Rockford in March 1926 from Centerville, Iowa. Emil worked at the Scandia Lumber Company, and they lived at 716 Seminary Street. Minnie had worked at the J.L. Clark Company until Tuesday, May 23rd, when she and several other workers were laid off. Minnie, like Mary Wallach, had only been in the building for a few minutes when the fire started. She left behind a 4-year-old daughter, Virginia. Minnie's body was returned to Centerville, Iowa, for burial. The dead women were so severely burned that identification was extremely difficult. Mildred's father came with her uncle and viewed the body 4 times and studied her features for over an hour before they agreed it was her. Helen Mamalis's body could only be identified by the jewelry that she wore. A coroner's jury demanded that State's Attorney William Knight investigate the case further to identify whether there was any criminal negligence by Sutton Top Shop in the cause of the fire. There was another investigation launched by the Deputy State Fire Marshal, George Carraine, who had inspected the Sutton Top Shop 12 months before the fire. At the time of the inspection, there were no women employed by the shop. Carraine had ordered certain changes to be made to the building to increase the safety of the workers employed there. The cost of the damage to the building was listed between $15,000 and $20,000. The city started a fund for the care of the children left behind. Fred Kramer later sued the company for the sum of $1,650 for the death of his daughter Mildred, and was awarded the money by arbitrator C.A. Townsend, who represented the Illinois Industrial Commission. The Sutton Top Shop reopened in a new location at the corner of Chestnut and South Winnebago Streets in the fall of that same year. The new building included 3 floors and cost almost $100,000 to build. The business was expanded to include visors for doll babies and shoes for children. The Sutton Top Shop still manufactured the winter tops for automobiles, but the new shop concentrated more on bodywork of wrecked vehicles. It eventually became one of the biggest body shops in northern Illinois. John C. Sutton's words were echoed by the whole city. "I am overcome by grief. I will do everything in my power to aid those in need and to lessen the sorrow of relatives and friends of the dead, especially the children." This is the end of our audio article. Thanks for listening.